Her hand was still on the doorknob when the sound began. Not a greeting, not a question, just a voice, hers, echoing from the corner speaker where I had left my phone on full volume. "Oh God, you're so much better than he is." She didn't move, didn't blink. The bag on her shoulder slipped, landing on the floor with a soft thud. Her eyes scanned the living room like she was checking for a sniper. I didn't say a word. Not when she opened her mouth. Not when she closed it again. And especially not when her own recorded voice moaned across the room, followed by a man's chuckle, low, confident, and horrifyingly familiar. I'd rewound that part maybe 10 times before she got home. The way she giggled. How she whispered, "Don't leave a mark, he's still suspicious from last time." That single sentence had removed all oxygen from the house. Still, I didn't pause it. I just sat in my chair like a man nailed to the floorboards. She took one hesitant step inside, then stopped again when the next line hit. "Promise me we'll do it again next Thursday." He always believes the work dinner excuse. That's when she dropped. Not gracefully. Not like in the movies. She didn't cover her face or cry into her hands. Her knees gave out like someone cut the strings holding her up. And still, I didn't look at her. The audio kept playing, but I'd long memorized the rest. What I hadn't anticipated was the silence that followed. Her silence. It wasn't begging. It wasn't crying. It was waiting. Like she didn't know if I'd throw her out or walk out myself. Like even she wasn't sure what she deserved. But I knew exactly what I deserved. I deserved this silence. Because deep down, I had known. I had known from the moment she smiled a little too wide last month when I asked if she was seeing someone. She had kissed my cheek and laughed instead of answering. I had felt it in her text that started with "babe" and ended with "sorry, too tired tonight." I had felt it in our cold bed and her colder eyes. But I needed proof. So I gave her my trust and left my old phone hidden in her car's glove compartment. I activated a mic remotely. What I got back wasn't just sound. It was a weapon. Now she was on her knees. And all I could think was, this isn't even the worst part. She didn't say a word. Didn't touch the pause button. Didn't crawl toward me like in the cheap movies or scream denials like I once imagined. She just sat there, knees tucked beneath her, palms flat on the floor, like she was trying to balance herself on the truth that had just detonated in our living room. The audio had stopped. I hadn't realized when. My phone had reached the end of the recording and sat quietly on the armrest beside me, as if it hadn't just changed our lives. I kept waiting for her to speak. I wanted to hear her lie, just one more time, maybe to prove to myself that I still knew her well enough to predict even that. But she didn't speak. Her silence was worse. I stared past her, past the kitchen doorway, where the light was still on. The same light I had stared into while listening to that recording for the first time just 2 hours earlier. My hand had been shaking then. I had dropped the phone halfway through the clip, then grabbed it again like I needed to finish it to feel the full weight. Like a punishment. Like an exorcism. She finally shifted. One hand reached up and gripped the strap of her purse like it was an anchor. Her voice, when it came, was hoarse and unfamiliar. "Where did you get that?" I laughed. Not loud. Not cruel. Just broken. Her shoulders twitched. "That's what you want to ask me?" I said, still staring at nothing. "Not if I'm okay. Not why I did it. Not whether I'm leaving. You want to know how?" She stood up too fast and nearly lost her balance. Her legs were unsteady, like someone learning how to walk again after years of pretending to run. "I didn't," she started, but I cut her off. "I placed the phone in your glove compartment 2 weeks ago. I set it to record any time the engine turned on. I only started checking it this morning. Didn't think I'd find anything. Just a gut feeling." "You bugged my car?" she asked, her voice rising now, reaching for outrage like it could cover her. But I didn't bite. "Do you know how insane I felt doing that?" I muttered, like some jealous, paranoid freak. "I spent hours convincing myself I was wrong. That you were just tired. That work dinners were just dinners." She opened her mouth again, then closed it. I finally turned my eyes toward her, and I saw it, something I hadn't seen in years. Not fear. Not sadness. Guilt. That strange, raw flicker of guilt. Not the kind you rehearse. The kind that comes uninvited. "What was his name?" I asked, my voice barely audible. She hesitated, just long enough for me to know that the name was familiar. Maybe someone from work. Maybe someone I'd shaken hands with. "Does it matter?" she whispered. That was it. That was the line that cracked me. I stood slowly. My knees felt like they were made of cement. I walked past her like she was furniture, like the couch and the rug and the framed photo of us in Maine. I walked straight to the drawer by the fridge, pulled out the envelope I had tucked there last month, and dropped it on the table. She stared at it. What is that? She asked. Thursday, I said. What? That's what matters. Not the name. Not the excuses. Just that you promised him next Thursday. You plan to lie again. She took a step forward, but I raised a hand. Don't, I said. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the envelope. I didn't stop her. She pulled out the contents, several printouts. Receipts. A short hotel booking confirmation. The audio transcription. I had been preparing for this moment without knowing I was. Like my subconscious had already started building the exit ramp. She looked up at me, eyes glassy. Please, she said, but her voice was cracking. Please what? I asked, cold now. Please pretend I didn't hear it? Please erase it? Please believe the version where it didn't happen. Her lips parted. She had no script, no defense. And in that terrifying stillness between us, I realized something else. This wasn't her first time doing this. This was just the first time she got caught. She didn't deny it. That's what burned the worst. No quick backpedal, no angry accusation thrown back at me. Just her standing there with a fistful of evidence, blinking like the air in the room had suddenly turned poisonous. Maybe it had, because I could barely breathe either. She sat down at the edge of the couch, paper still clutched in her hand like it could somehow rewrite itself if she held on tight enough. She looked so small in that moment. For a brief second, my instinct was to reach out and ask if she was okay. But I didn't. I let the silence do what it does best, expose everything we'd both been hiding. You've done this before, I said flatly. Her head lowered, eyes fixed on the printouts in her lap. It wasn't serious, she said quietly, like she was giving herself permission to reduce it to something manageable. A bad decision. A mistake. Like forgetting to water the plants or missing a dentist appointment. How long? I asked. She swallowed. The second of hesitation told me more than her answer ever could. A few months, she said. Wrong answer. Not because it was too long, but because it was too clean. Too curated. Like she'd rehearsed it on the drive home, in case something ever happened. That's not the truth, I muttered. My voice was shaking now, but I couldn't stop. You can't look someone in the eye and say it was a few months when I've been wondering who you are for almost a year. I didn't plan any of this, she shot back suddenly, voice rising, defensive. It just happened. No, I said, stepping forward. Dropping a glass of milk is something that just happens. Booking hotel rooms? Lying to my face? Telling another man you love Thursdays? That takes planning. She winced, and for a split second, I felt like I had slapped her. But I hadn't raised my voice. Hadn't even stood taller. The words had done it. The truth was suddenly too loud to ignore. I thought we were fine, she said softly. You didn't think at all, I replied. You just got used to me being the guy who never asked, never checked, never challenged you. The guy who waited at home while you were out playing pretend with someone who doesn't even know how you take your coffee. Her eyes shot to mine at that. Don't talk like you know him. Oh, I don't, I said. But I know enough. His voice was clear. I know he calls you Red, even though you haven't dyed your hair since 2017. I know he doesn't know we still sleep in the same bed, because you told him I moved to the guest room. I know he bought you that black necklace you said you got from your sister. Should I go on? She looked like she was going to be sick. Stop, she said weakly. No, I said, almost whispering. Because I stopped myself for a year. I stopped myself from checking your texts, from reading your tone, from questioning why you didn't want to kiss me goodnight anymore. I stopped myself from becoming the guy who records his wife. And now? Now I'm done stopping. She stood up slowly, walked toward the hallway, but not to leave. She wasn't escaping. She was stalling. Then she turned around. It's over, she said. You heard it. You know. You win. Is that what this is to you? A game. I laughed bitterly. There's no winner here. She didn't respond. She just stood there with that strange, twisted calm like a candle that's burned down to the stub but still refuses to go out. Then I said it. The one thing I hadn't planned to say. I already called him. She blinked. What? Her voice cracked just slightly. I called him. 30 minutes before you got home. I didn't say who I was. I just said, you'll want to cancel next Thursday. He laughed at first. Then he stopped. Then he hung up. Her hand went to her mouth. She looked like she'd been punched in the throat. And if you're wondering how I got his number, I added coldly, you should really stop using the same passcode for your phone and your email. The way her knees buckled, just slightly, told me she knew exactly what I'd seen. And I hadn't even mentioned the photos yet. Not yet. She stood frozen, staring at me like she was trying to read a foreign language written across my face. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Not denial, not outrage, not even fear anymore. Just stillness. That eerie calm you see in people who've been told the fire is already at the door and there's nowhere left to run. She knew what I'd seen. She had to. The digital paper trail wasn't just carelessness, it was arrogance. Or maybe it was just comfort. She never thought I'd look. I'd made it too easy. I was too soft, too forgiving. The kind of husband who apologized after she snapped at me for forgetting to buy oat milk. The one who'd blame himself when she needed space and left town without warning. But all that changed the night I opened her email and saw the folder, titled, stupidly, Tax Docs. Inside, 12 high-res photos, neatly timestamped, from a trip she told me she canceled because the agency backed out last minute. One photo in particular stood out, not because of what they were doing, but because of where they were doing it, a boutique Airbnb in Asheville. I remembered researching that place myself for a getaway we never ended up taking. She told me it was too expensive. Turns out, she just saved it for someone else. I hadn't printed the photos. Didn't need to. I had memorized them. Every detail burned into my mind like fingerprints on steel. Still, I hadn't mentioned them to her yet. She slowly walked over to the kitchen counter and leaned against it like her bones had given up. Her back was to me, but I could see her reflection in the darkened oven door. Her hands were trembling as she whispered, "Did you tell him who you were?" "No." "Did you tell him what I did?" "No." I repeated. I wanted him to hear the fear in my voice without knowing where it came from. I wanted him to wonder if his life was about to collapse. I wanted him to realize there's someone out there who sees him for exactly what he is. A coward. "You think I don't know that?" she said suddenly, spinning around, voice raw. "You think I haven't been sick over this? You've been sick." I snapped, my voice rising for the first time. "You've been playing house with me while sneaking off to the mountains with someone who calls you his little secret. Don't talk to me about sick." Her face went pale. So she knew I'd read the messages too. I walked to the window and stared out into the yard. It was dark, quiet. That suburban stillness we always said we loved. Now it felt like a lie painted on the glass. "You weren't just cheating," I said quietly. "You were building a second life. A version of you I never got to meet. A woman with different laughs, different habits, different lingerie. Do you know how insane it feels to realize your own wife's personality depends on who's watching her?" She didn't answer. She didn't move. The silence stretched long and thick. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I reached down, unlocked my phone, pulled up a single photo, not the worst one, not even the most explicit, just one that felt like a bullet, and turned the screen to her without saying a word. Her expression collapsed. It was a selfie, not hers or his, taken while she slept beside him. Her hair a mess. His arm wrapped around her like a prize. The caption was just one word. Mine. She stumbled backward, almost dropped the wine glass she had picked up from the counter. And then came something I hadn't expected. She laughed. A broken, bitter, stunned laugh. A sound that didn't belong in this house. It echoed off the walls and died somewhere near the ceiling fan. "I didn't know he took that," she said, and for once, I believed her. "Doesn't matter," I said coldly. "He took something either way." Then I walked over to her bag, pulled out her keys, and set them gently on the table. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice soft now, almost childlike. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, eyes fixed on hers. "You are." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just looked at me like she was trying to figure out how this version of me, this man she thought would crumble, suddenly stood so still. And then she took the keys. She knew it was only beginning. And so did I. The door closed behind her, but the echo didn't follow. It was as if the house itself refused to acknowledge her exit. I stood in the center of the room, surrounded by every object we'd bought together, furniture chosen on lazy Sundays, framed photos from places that now felt fictional. All of it silent, heavy, watching me. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt cold. I didn't move for a long time. Just stood there in the quiet, staring at the space where her keys had rested a moment earlier. I had always imagined this moment would be loud, tears, yelling, door slams. But there was no chaos. Just detachment. A surgical removal of her from my home, as if excising a tumor. Eventually, I sat. The couch still held the shape of her weight from only minutes ago. I should have been packing her things, calling a lawyer, pouring a drink, anything. But my hands just rested on my knees while my phone screen lit up again and again with names I didn't want to see. 2 texts from her mother. A missed call from her sister. Then a name I didn't recognize, Tobias. No last name. Just that. I stared at it, unsure. I opened the message. I don't know what she told you, but please stop harassing me. This is going too far. I'll block you if you message me again. I hadn't sent him anything. Not yet. He was scared, which meant she had reached him already. The air in my lungs turned sour. It was happening in real time, the rearranging of the narrative. She was building a new version of this story before I'd even finished digesting the truth. And that meant she wasn't just sorry. She was calculating. I got up, suddenly restless. My chest felt like it was being compressed from the inside out. I needed air. I opened the back door and stepped out onto the patio. It was quiet outside. No wind, no night birds, just the brittle rustle of leaves that hadn't moved in hours. That's when I noticed the car lights. Down the street. Not moving. Just sitting. A familiar shape. Low to the ground. Headlights off but engine barely audible. I didn't recognize it right away, but something felt wrong. I moved to the edge of the lawn, squinting. The door opened. And there she was. She hadn't even left the neighborhood. She had driven 3 houses down. Parked. Saturday. And now she was walking back. I should have gone inside. Closed the door. Locked it. But I didn't. I stood there watching as she walked slowly toward the house with that same exhausted expression, like someone returning from a war they started themselves. She stopped a few feet from me. I didn't know where to go, she said quietly. I stared at her. You had a destination every Thursday. Why is tonight so different? Her face contorted slightly, but she didn't respond. She looked like she'd been crying in the car, but there were no tears now. Only dried shame clinging to her features. I'm not here to beg, she said. There's more. I didn't want more. I didn't want any second layer, any twisted justification, or a bombshell she'd been saving in her back pocket. But my legs didn't move. My mouth didn't speak. I just stood there, stunned by how fast broken people crawl back to the fire, they said. What more could you possibly say that hasn't already been said with a camera, a microphone, and a man who called you his property? She winced at that word property, but didn't look away. I think I'm pregnant, she whispered. That moment did something to me. Something irreversible. Time slowed. The leaves stopped rustling altogether. The breath I was about to take turned to stone in my chest. I looked at her face for some clue, some giveaway that this was a trick, a new layer of control. But she wasn't smirking. She wasn't trembling either. She looked terrified. I narrowed my eyes. I asked, though I already knew the answer. She hesitated just enough, then nodded. And for the first time since this started, I felt nothing. Not rage. Not pain. Just pure, absolute vacancy. A void so deep that even her truth couldn't reach it. I don't remember walking back inside. All I recall is the weight of the door clicking shut behind me and the hollow echo it left in the hallway. She followed, silently, as if afraid sound itself might shatter what was left between us. I sat down at the kitchen table, and she didn't take a seat. She stood with her back to the counter, arms folded across her chest like she was bracing for an earthquake that hadn't yet hit. That earthquake was me. But I wasn't ready to erupt. Not yet. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was past the burn, past the betrayal, past even the humiliation. I was something colder, more dangerous. I was a man without a center, watching the woman he once trusted with his soul whisper a sentence that rearranged the entire architecture of his life. I think I'm pregnant. Those words weren't a confession. They were a demolition charge. You think, I repeated quietly. Not you know. I haven't taken a test, she said. But I'm late. I've been late before, but this feels different. I nodded slowly, more to myself than to her. The thoughts swelled in my head like poison. She had been lying to me while carrying the possibility of someone else's child. A stranger's. A man who thought of me as a punchline, who laughed into her neck while she lied about business dinners. What do you want from me? I asked finally. Why are you here? Her face twisted in a way I'd never seen. Like she didn't recognize herself either. I don't know, she said. I didn't plan any of this. I thought I could handle it. I didn't expect. That's the thing, I interrupted. You never expected to get caught. You never expected the mask to slip. You thought you were smarter than everyone else, and that includes me. Especially me. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You don't accidentally build a second life, Emery. She flinched at the sound of her name. Like I had weaponized it. Maybe I had. I came back because I didn't know who else to go to, she said. You came back because the fantasy broke down, I replied. Because the guy who called you Red didn't pick up. Because you realized you don't actually know what the hell you're doing, and I was your safest landing pad. Always have been. Her shoulders sagged. She looked old, older than I'd ever seen her, as if the truth had aged her in real time. I wanted to say something, she whispered. Say it. I think I wanted you to save me. I stared at her. For a brief moment, I saw the version of her I had fallen in love with, a younger version, wide-eyed and untested, sitting on the floor of our first apartment, surrounded by empty boxes and possibilities. That version was gone now. She had been replaced by someone who wore guilt like makeup and lies like perfume. From what? I asked. Yourself? She nodded, but it didn't mean anything. The room filled with silence again. But this time, it wasn't passive. It was charged. Like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do. I'm going to tell you something now, I said slowly. And you're going to listen, and you're not going to speak until I'm done. She nodded, eyes wide. If you're pregnant, and that's a big if, you will not tell him. Not yet. You will take a test. You will find out for sure. And if it's positive, we will go together. You will explain everything. Not to me. To him. Because if he's man enough to create this chaos, he's man enough to face it. Her lip trembled. And you will not, I added, use me as your shelter again. You lost that. Tonight. The version of me that protected you from yourself is gone. I buried him with every Thursday night you sold to someone else. She sat down finally, and for the first time since she walked back into the house, she started crying. Not quietly, not with restraint. She broke open, and yet, I still didn't feel sorry for her. I had no more space for that, because part of me was starting to realize something else. I wasn't just angry that she cheated. I was angry that I let her. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. She stayed on the couch, curled up under the throw blanket we'd bought last Christmas. The one she said reminded her of something her grandma used to have. I sat in the bedroom, the door slightly cracked, watching the red light of my phone blink every few seconds like a metronome, counting down to something I couldn't see yet. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that damn photo again. His arm around her. Her sleeping like nothing was wrong. It was burned into the back of my mind like a scar that hadn't yet blistered. I kept thinking about what I'd said, that I wasn't her shelter anymore. And I meant it. But something else had crept into me during the hours between midnight and dawn, something I didn't want to admit. I still didn't know who I was without her. Or rather, who I was when I wasn't protecting her from the consequences she manufactured. At 6:12 a.m., I got the call. I wasn't expecting it. I almost didn't answer. The number was unknown, just a string of 10 digits, unrecognizable. I let it ring once, twice. On the third, I picked up and held the phone to my ear without a word. There was silence, then breathing, then a voice. I know who you are, it said. I froze. The voice wasn't hers. And it wasn't his, the man I'd heard in the recording. This was someone else. Deeper. Older. And I know what you've found. The voice continued. Who is this? I asked, my throat dry. A pause. I'm his brother. The room tilted slightly, like gravity had shifted beneath my feet. Tobias. I said. No, the voice replied. I'm Aaron. Tobias is unavailable right now. Or maybe just hiding. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. I don't want to get involved, the man said. But you need to know something. You're not the only one. I didn't understand. What are you talking about? I asked. Another pause. He's been doing this for years. Women. Married women. Keeps notes. Trophies. Sometimes names. Sometimes recordings. He brags when he's drunk. Says it's easier when they're already unhappy. Said your wife was one of his cleanest wins. Whatever that means. I gripped the phone tighter. You're lying, I whispered. No, I'm not. And I didn't call to defend you. I don't care what you do next. I just didn't want another man walking into a disaster without knowing what he was walking into. You're not the first. You're just the first to fight back. Then the line went dead. I sat there in stunned silence for a full minute before realizing I had stopped breathing. My ears rang. My mind spun. I walked back out into the living room and stared at her sleeping form on the couch. My traitorous, sobbing wife. The woman who had told me she didn't know how it got this far. But now I knew something she didn't. She wasn't special to him. She was a target. One of many. A game. An entry in a notebook. And suddenly, a new kind of rage surged in me. Not just against her, but against him. Against the predator who made his hobby the dismantling of other people's lives. A man who recorded, collected, and discarded. Who laughed while husbands like me questioned our worth. But there was something else too. A terrifying idea forming at the back of my skull. If she was pregnant, then maybe it wasn't just betrayal I was holding. Maybe it was evidence. And maybe someone out there didn't want that evidence to exist. She was still asleep on the couch when I slipped my shoes on. The morning sun bled through the blinds in pale strips, illuminating her tear-streaked cheeks and the crumpled tissue still clutched in one hand. She looked like a child who had cried herself to sleep. But there was no part of me left that could feel pity for her. Not anymore. I didn't wake her. I didn't leave a note. Instead, I placed one final envelope on the kitchen table, simple, unsealed, deliberate. Inside was a printout of a local counselor's contact information, a single sentence written in blue pen. You will never be the same. That's the point. I stepped outside into the cool morning air, a bag over my shoulder and the weight of silence lifting slowly from my chest. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't moving with dread. I was moving with clarity. I didn't go far. I checked into a small lakeside rental on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, just peace and water and sky. It was quiet. So quiet I could hear my own thoughts again. I sat by the window for hours that first day, not thinking about her or him or the recording or the baby. Just sitting, breathing, existing on my own terms. And that night, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I slept. No dreams. No static. No wait. Just sleep. Over the next week, things started shifting. She didn't contact me right away, not for 2 days. Then a message came through. I took the test. Negative. I thought you should know. No apology. No begging. Just a quiet, clean admission. And strangely, that was enough. Not enough to fix anything, but enough to signal that she was finally waking up inside her own nightmare. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some things don't require closure. Some things are closure. What came next surprised even me. It wasn't anger or revenge. It wasn't some righteous crusade to expose her or destroy him or hunt down every name in his ledger. I thought about it, sure. I thought about posting his messages, sharing the recordings, dragging his lies into the light. But then I realized I wasn't part of his story anymore. And I wasn't hers either. I had stepped out of the burning room. And I had survived it. Weeks passed. I found a lawyer. The divorce moved forward quietly, without a courtroom battle or media show. I didn't ask for the house. I didn't fight for the furniture. I asked for one thing, my time back. And I gave it to myself. I reconnected with my brother. Started running again. Started reading again. I opened an old draft of a novel I'd started 5 years ago and began to write again. At first, it was slow. 1 page a night. Then 2. Then 5. It became the story of a man who loses everything and still finds himself. The ending? Hope. Real hope. Not the kind you fake for Facebook or drag out at family gatherings. The kind you build yourself after the world you knew falls apart. A year later, I walked past her in a bookstore downtown. She was alone, holding a cup of coffee and flipping through a magazine. Our eyes met. She didn't look away. She gave a small nod. I gave one back. There was no pain left between us. Just distance. And peace. I walked out the door, down the street, into a life I had rebuilt brick by brick, with no more secrets, no more static, and nothing left to prove. Because I didn't just get through the betrayal. I grew beyond it.